Unsung Murder Ballads discusses topics of a disturbing nature.
And we're not going to hold back on the graphic details and disturbing content.
So we do not recommend our podcast for children under the age of 13.
And while we respect the victims and their families involved in these tragic cases,
we're also going to be critical of mistakes that are made during the investigations.
And we're going to use dark humor to express ourselves now and then.
So with that said, this podcast may not be for everyone.
And that's okay. We're glad you're here checking us out.
And if you've made it this far, welcome to the Unsung Murder Ballads family. And follow us on Instagram at Unsung Murder Ballads if you want to talk to us.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Unsung Murder Ballads. This is episode 101. I am Janus Dead.
I'm Jameson Dead.
And I'm Joyous Dead.
And tonight we have for you our next For Joyous's Information episode.
Oh, how perfect that for 101. It's like an education episode.
I didn't even think of that. That's really cool.
That's great.
Would you look at that? We're just accidentally being geniuses.
Yes, and that's very cool. And this is a case that is so famous. I'm actually surprised you didn't know more about it when we first talked about it.
Well, I'm full of surprises, aren't I?
You are. So I do know that we've talked about it before, and you said you watched a little bit of it, but we are going to compare. Basically, we're going to be discussing the life and crimes of Steven Avery, which was the subject of the Netflix documentary Making a Murderer. But we're going to be comparing it against the kind of rebuttal documentary called Convicting a Murderer. So, and for anyone who doesn't know, and we're going to recap the crime in a little bit, but Making a Murderer took this case and really catapulted it into the spotlight. And it was years before Convicting a Murderer came out, and that was because they really dug deep and answered a lot of the questions that Making a Murderer didn't address. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so as a quick recap of Making a Murderer. So Steven Avery is from Wisconsin, Manitowoc County to be specific, and he was wrongfully convicted of a sexual assault against a woman in the 80s. And he went to jail, but he was found guilty, and he always professed his innocence. Even after the fact that had he just admitted guilt, he would have gotten paroled and would have been out. He still refused to admit his, to deny, whatever, claim to lie and claim he did it.
Mm-hmm.
So he eventually was released after 18 years because they...
18 years?
18 years.
Damn. When does someone ever do that much time for a sexual assault?
When it's an accident, apparently.
What the fuck?
Because eventually the DNA evidence comes out that exonerates him. It wasn't him. And it was proven by DNA.
Wow. It just sucks when it's so rare that people actually get in any sort of real trouble for that.
Agreed. And
then it's someone who didn't even do it. That really sucks.
Yes. So he's exonerated and he's let out. And he's basically, Making a Murderer has it so that he's back with his family. He's trying to live his life. But they took 18 years from him. So he and his lawyers turn around and decide to sue Manitowoc County for $36 million. At which point, all of a sudden, as Making a Murderer shows it, he is arrested for murder.
Oh.
And it turns out that a woman by the name of Teresa Halbach went missing, and the last place she was seen was on his property. So there's a lot of speculation, and this is what most of the documentary is about what happened to her, exactly where she went, who saw her, was it Steven Avery, but he's arrested. And later on, after his arrest, his nephew, Brandon Dassey, is shown on video confessing to his part in the murder of Teresa Halbach.
Oh, shit.
But when you watch the video, it's very clear that he's not 100%, he's not on his game. Like, he's got some sort of learning disability, or maybe his IQ is lower, and he's very clearly being manipulated.
Right. Like, you can tell.
Right. And he's even describing things that, based on the crime scene photos, couldn't have been possible. But with that, he's arrested. And especially because the whole time he's just trying to go home. And the police are, you can't go anywhere until you tell us what really happened kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But eventually he confesses to this and he's arrested. And both him and Steven Avery are put on trial. And they are both found guilty of murder and sentenced to life. Now they
and this is in the same county?
Yes. So at this point now, as we stand. They're both still in jail. Most of their appeals are exhausted. And all these groups, Making a Murderer covered this, and they put it out, I think it was in 2015. It was released, and it basically made the entire country aware of the situation. And people reacted. And
Oh yeah, definitely.
yeah, I remember being upset about it too. So now, after having watched Convicting a Murderer, this group dug really deep, and they presented evidence that just was not part of Making a Murderer, and it changed my thoughts on a lot of things, because I still had questions at the end of Making a Murderer. Because if the police did frame Steven Avery, then my thoughts were, who killed Teresa Halbach? Was it the police? Did they not really care who really killed her if he was innocent? There were a lot of lingering questions.
Right. And it's tough when something is an expose and then it leaves missing answers. It's like, what's really going on here?
Well, the interesting thing about Making a Murderer is they did put out a part 2. And in that part 2, they explored some possible suspects. And
Gotcha.
Since then, the lawyers for Steven Avery have tried to put that into the court. They basically said, here's who we think did it. Can we investigate this? And so far, it's all just been shot down. So tonight, what we're going to spend, well, I say tonight, this is going to be a 3-part series on Steven Avery.
There's so much that goes into this.
Yes, and 3 parts.
And just one murder, huh?
Yes. Because to be upfront, the supporters of Steven Avery are very adamant. They're very passionate. It's almost cult-like. They don't want to hear evidence to the contrary. And the people that do think he's guilty, they have a hard time hearing evidence to the contrary as well. So having watched both of these series and really sat down, I put all my notes together, I wanted to talk about it. I wanted to compare the two, and I couldn't cut it down any further than a 3-parter. Like it's
Dang.
just there's too much to do. We wouldn't do it justice to make it all in 1 hour. So
all right, well, we better lock in then.
Yeah, so here we go, and I will do my best to make sure I differentiate which evidence comes from Making a Murderer and which information is coming from Convicting a Murderer as we go, just because I want to make sure that anyone listening knows where I'm getting my information from. I didn't take too much information from any other source for this, with the exception of things about Teresa Halbach's life, because I'm comparing the two. I'm not necessarily saying one is more right than the other. Does that make sense? Although, as you hear the evidence, it's going to be real obvious where I stand, and I think you'll draw this. I hope you'll draw the same conclusion. But if you don't, that's an awesome point for discussion at the end.
All right, let's rock.
All right, so here we go. In 2015, Making a Murderer released and created a storm of discussion and activity in the U.S. Even celebrities got involved in the public discourse. This created a large group of people that wanted to free Steven Avery and Brandon Dassey. From there, as you can imagine, those on either side became rude with each other and belligerent, and the two sides became more and more extreme.
That's the internet, baby.
Yep. They are referred to as truthers, who support the two of them, and guilters, who think they're guilty. I know, it's kind of silly, but that's how it's referred to.
That seems like a 5th grade kind of mentality there.
Agreed.
Indeed, it's very silly.
So there is so much backlash from Making a Murderer that it echoes the race problems in our criminal justice system. But really, you only need to ask yourself this question: why are so many people upset at a white man being wrongfully convicted? Because in this country, how many non-whites, African Americans in particular, are wrongfully convicted?
Right, and like, because this one white man it's a national like controversy that like people care about.
Exactly. It echoes what happened to the girl in Wyoming. Oh my God, I'm forgetting her name. The one who disappeared and then her boyfriend showed up in Florida.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, it echoes Gabby Petito. You know, this white girl goes missing, but nobody gave a shit about the Native Americans who are going missing. It does create that problem. So in response to this, Candace Owens created Convicting a Murderer in response to Making a Murderer. So we're gonna, like I said earlier, we're gonna do a deeper dive into comparing the two. So in Making a Murderer, the Avery family is portrayed as outcasts in their community because they own a salvage yard and were not as well educated as their neighbors. Steven Avery stated that they had a good family and he had a good childhood. Steven Avery, is reported to have had an IQ of 70, which would indicate that his coping skills might not be where they should be as an adult. In Making a Murderer, Avery claimed that he did not have much on his criminal record. Making a Murderer tells us that he had 3 counts of burglary with his friends, breaking into a bar through a broken window, and an animal cruelty charge that was downplayed, as we're going to touch on in a little bit. Now, in contrast, Convicting a Murderer shows us that Avery had a deeper criminal history. Yes, he has the 3 burglary charges, but here's what Making a Murderer didn't tell us. Avery had actually broken into the same bar 3 separate times.
Oh, damn.
Come on, dude.
Even
Why are
after...
you gonna keep breaking into the same place?
It's stupid, right? I mean, I guess there's probably not a lot to do in Manitowoc County. I don't know.
Yeah.
But even after the owner of the bar had taken steps to repair the previous break-ins, like, he's still breaking into the place. Which is so
come on,
stupid.
lay off, dude.
Making a Murderer shows that Avery stole $14 in quarters, some beer, and a sandwich.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
A
my
doofus.
God.
That's it. That's what they showed. However, that was only the first time they broke in. Subsequent break-ins resulted in extensive damage to the bar. Making a Murderer made a conscious decision to minimize what he did. They also...
And when they start making a narrative, that's a little sus.
Yes, exactly. They also did not include how Avery and his friends drove around town, breaking into places, stealing items, which included alcohol, TVs, vinyl records, and shotguns and shells.
Oh, shit.
That is an interesting thing to leave out.
Exactly. Now, Avery and his friends would bring these items up to the Avery family cottage, which was further north from where they lived. Now, ironically, it was Avery's father who found the stashed loot, and he didn't know where it came from. So what does he do? He calls the police and says, "I found this shit in my cabin."
Oh, God.
And Steven Avery and his friends are then arrested. All that's left out of Making a Murderer.
Well, that's
Damn.
convenient for them.
Exactly. So it's soon after this that Steven Avery meets and marries his first wife, Lori Matheson, in 1982 when he's only 19 years old.
Wow.
Now, it's on his honeymoon with Lori. Avery continues to break into places.
On his honeymoon? Dude, don't you have better shit to do?
What a winner.
I'm telling you, it's crazy. And again, none of this is included in Making a Murderer.
Right, so he's like a chronic kleptomaniac and whatever the word is for someone who loves breaking into places.
But same idea, yeah.
Yeah.
So truthers downplay this by stating that they believed it was because he had a low IQ that he was being manipulated into doing these crimes.
By whom?
His friends, apparently.
Yeah, his friends that were on his honeymoon?
True, right? To be fair, though, when I was a teenager, my father was convinced I was the follower, and that's why I got into trouble.
That's hilarious, because you were the
I was
leader,
definitely,
100%.
it was mostly my idea half the time.
You were
yes.
the problem.
Yes, I was.
But I love that of your dad giving you that benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, he did. He tried so hard. He did not want to believe that. So they also state that Avery only stole property and that he was never violent, and that somehow made it okay in their eyes, the truthers.
Well, I mean, there's something to that I'm less upset by property crime, but also property crime for no reason just because you think it's fun is pretty fucking stupid.
It is stupid, and it's something that, again, I did it as a teenager to a degree, but you stop after a while. You can't, you know what I mean, as an adult, if you're doing that. At 19, you're doing that. There's a problem.
Yeah, get a grip.
Well, I'd like to refer to Arrested Development.
I've never actually watched that, so...
Oh, no, I'm talking about the actual thing.
Oh.
The concept.
the actual concept
yes.
of Arrested Development, because that right now is what I'm picturing, because, yeah, especially with a low IQ like that.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. Yeah. So Avery's name was often listed as a person of interest for various crime in the area, including harassment. At this point in his life, he is well known to law enforcement. Avery would threaten violence on people that were aware of his crimes to deter them from speaking publicly about them. Yeah, exactly.
Did that actually work?
Well, obviously, it did to a degree if he's not being arrested for them. So Lori, Avery's wife, reported to police that at one point, Avery was obsessed with his ex, a woman named Wendy, and would even stalk her, if you can imagine.
Yikes, this is a lot of stuff.
And we're just cracking this open.
All right, so wait, the wife was there for that?
So his wife told police that she's married to Steven Avery, and he is obsessed with an ex and is stalking an ex, and yet he's still married to her. She's aware of this.
Huge red
That's
flags everywhere.
weird.
Yeah. There's also a second unnamed woman that Avery was obsessed over. And this was when he was dating Wendy. So
Oh,
he
dear God.
apparently he's
Ugh.
with one but can't let go of another. It's weird. When he was dating Wendy, he proposed to her after they were only together for 6 weeks, and she shot him down. And that's when he began to harass her.
People hate rejection.
Yeah, especially him. So police reports show that he threatened to shoot her or run her off the road while driving.
Uh-oh.
There is even a police report that has a statement from a woman where she claimed that Steven Avery forced himself on her and stated, "That's how I lost my virginity."
Oh.
Yeah. But now we're going to go back. We have to go back to look at the charge of animal cruelty that I said we would discuss later, because this is brought up on Making a Murderer. So trigger warning, if you do not want to hear the details of an animal being tortured, please skip ahead a minute or so, but here we go. This was November of 1982, and Avery states that he was young and stupid and hanging out with the wrong people. In Making a Murderer, Avery states that he and his friends were sitting around a fire and, quote, negging, unquote, a cat, and he tossed it over the fire and that the cat lit up.
Oh, no. That's awful.
Well, Convicting a Murderer digs up a little more details on this that Making a Murderer chose not to include. Avery and his friends were drinking near a fire. Police reports state that Avery decided that he should burn a cat, not throw the cat over the fire. Avery had to chase the cat down. He then douses the cat in flammable liquid and had a friend throw the cat into the fire.
Yeah, that's very different.
As the cat came out of the fire and was burning, Avery put more gas on it to supposedly end its suffering faster.
Okay.
Avery claims that it was the bad influence of his friends that made him do this. Another point about animal cruelty, Avery had a pet dog that had run away, and Avery went out to find it. Upon finding it, Avery put the dog on a chain and had the chain hanging out the vehicle's window as he drove home, pulling and dragging the dog along the side of the vehicle.
Oh my God, that's awful.
Avery's own family made statements about how bad the dog was injured from this.
Oh, I'm like a little speechless. I'm like, I wish I could show my face. Like, oh my God.
Yeah, it's awful. And this, again, Making a Murderer literally just says, animal cruelty charge. And he's like, I just threw it over a fire and it went up in flames. Like, none of this is in there.
Right. They're really, really minimizing all the other shit.
Exactly.
Yeah, they're making this look really one-sided.
Yes. So Avery was sentenced for the animal cruelty, and his daughter would be born while he was in jail for that sentence. But
How long was the sentence?
I didn't dig too deep on that because it's not a super big important part of all this. So it's not too long because he's going to be out by 1984. And I think that was 1982, so at the most I would say 2 years, somewhere in that ballpark. But he was free when his second daughter was born, and Avery's family claimed that extended family members were always claiming false things about Steven Avery. Okay. So in
Sure.
Yeah, exactly. In 1984, a complaint was filed against Avery with police regarding him being outside his home, naked and masturbating while his cousin, Sandra Morris, drove by.
What
the fuck?
actual hell?
I kid you not. So we jump ahead a little bit to January of 1985, and Avery, in his car, this is on Making a Murderer, they discuss this, Avery in his car forced Sandra, his cousin, off the road. As Avery told the story, he was warming up his car when he saw Sandra drive by, so he pursued her. He pulled up alongside of her, and then they hit their two cars. After they stopped, Avery exited his vehicle with a gun, and Sandra asked him what he was doing. He would later claim the gun wasn't loaded. Avery said he did this because she was the one spreading rumors about him in his front yard, and he was hoping to put a stop to it.
Ugh.
She obviously
What do you mean by that, sir?
right? She obviously reported the problem, and Avery's family was quick to accuse Sandra and her husband, who was in law enforcement, by the way. They accused them of villainizing Steven Avery. That's the making a murderer version of events.
Wow,
Mm-hmm.
this guy just can't do anything wrong in their eyes, can they?
It's crazy because convicting a murderer is going to dig up the other police reports that making a murderer didn't bother to share. The actual police reports show that Avery came up behind Sandra's vehicle quickly and rammed into the back end of her car. He then held a gun to her and ordered her to get into his car.
What the fuck?
But because Sandra's daughter was in the car, she refused, even at gunpoint. She convinced him to let her bring her daughter home first and that she would then return to him. And of course, once she got the chance, she called the police. When the police arrived at Avery's home, Avery pretended that they had woken him up. They asked if he had been out that morning, to which he said no. Keep in mind, this is January. So police put their hand on the hood of his vehicle and could feel that it was still warm.
Idiot.
So they then asked to see any guns that he had. And of course, he brought it out. But the gun itself was still cold, showing that it hadn't been in the house the whole time.
Idiot.
So Avery was arrested. Now, making a murderer portrays Avery as the victim in this interaction.
Huh.
Yeah. Avery received 6 years for reckless endangerment and felony possession of a firearm. While on bail, awaiting trial, Avery and his wife Lori would have twin boys. So keep in mind, this is 4 kids now. So
Great. That's just great.
Yep. So Lori also had a son named Jason before she had met up with Steven Avery, and Avery would beat him, like abuse him.
Of course.
There are reports of Avery hitting Jason so hard in the mouth that he knocked out the kid's 2 front teeth.
Oh.
But
That's ridiculous.
But there's no history of violence here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So now for the incident that creates the majority of the drama in this entire case. And I say a majority, it's only because as much as the murder of Teresa Halbach is obviously the pinpoint, the linchpin in all of this, this is the moment that created the drama of that murder, making it even remotely debatable. In July of 1985, a woman named Penny Bernstein was grabbed by a man in a black hoodie while she jogged along Lake Michigan. Penny was a well-off, contributing member of the community and a local business owner. The man attempted to rape her, but was unable to, and she was then beaten and left for dead.
Oh my God.
Making a Murderer discussed how a friend of Avery's, cousin Sandra, Judy, was working at the sheriff's office and was assigned to take Penny's report. After hearing the description of Penny's attacker, Judy said, "That sounds like Steven Avery." So Manitowoc detectives took Avery's older mugshot photo and made a composite sketch of it and showed it to Penny. They then laid out numerous photos, including the exact photo that was used to make the sketch. And of course, Penny picked that one out.
Mm-hmm.
So at this point, she's identified Avery as her attacker. Avery is then arrested and denied bail while awaiting trial. Before the trial, city police made the sheriff's office aware of another suspect by the name of Gregory Allen that they were certain was responsible for Penny's assault. Avery had numerous witnesses that could pinpoint his exact whereabouts for that entire day. However, police didn't follow up on that or the Allen lead, and they moved forward against Avery.
Yeah, that's definitely showing their bias.
Exactly. Avery was only 23, and he was convicted to 32 years for sexual assault and false imprisonment. In the state of Wisconsin, an inmate must admit guilt to a crime in order to receive parole. Avery never admitted guilt to this crime, knowing that he couldn't get parole as a result. There were murderers that were literally getting paroled while he continued to maintain his innocence.
Wow.
And Avery appealed numerous times but was always denied. So this next part here that we're going to discuss comes from Convicting a Murderer, and it's necessary to understand Steven Avery's character. Now, I did, organize this, so this is all happening while he's in prison for the wrongful conviction of the assault on Penny Bernstein. So while Avery's incarcerated, his wife Lori is struggling with all their young children, and Avery is pressuring his family to help her. Avery asked his younger brother Earl, who was 14 or 15 years old at this time, to look after Lori. Avery,
Ugh, that's a big ask of another child.
right? Okay, just wait. you literally it's funny because when I read this next sentence, the very next sentence, you're gonna be like, yeah, just wait. So Avery would instruct his wife and brother to perform sexual acts on one another while he listened on the phone.
Oh
What the
my
fuck?
God.
Yeah.
Hey, no.
Yeah.
I don't like that.
Nobody does. It's disgusting.
That's horrible.
At one point, Earl's wife, later, a couple years later, who had never met Steven Avery, was essentially coerced into going to prison to meet him for the first time. While
Oh, that
there,
can't be good.
Avery made advances towards her and even told her that they share wives in his family.
Oh,
Ugh,
Avery would
gross.
write Earl's wife letters trying to convince her to be with him and other fucked up shit like that.
man, I would get out of there so fast if I were her.
This man is vile.
It should be noted that this all comes from Earl's and his wife's recollection, and that Steven Avery's ex-wife Lori has never stated anything publicly regarding any of this.
Interesting.
Yeah. So
Are they still married? Or were they still married at this?
Earl and his wife?
No, I mean Avery and his wife.
Oh, no. Lori and him separate by the time he gets out of prison for the wrongful conviction. Yeah, which we'll get to in a little bit. So one important note that needs to be added is that Avery would write letters to his wife during this time where he threatened to hurt and kill her.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad she leaves him.
Many people that believed he was innocent chalk this up to him being emotional and not meaning any of it. And that may be,
What?
yeah, right?
How the hell?
Right. I mean, that may be true some of the times, but as we've seen 100 times on this podcast, sometimes what you're seeing are fucking warning signs.
Yeah.
Yes, and I don't know about you, but if someone's saying they want to fucking kill me, I'm gonna believe that.
Yeah, I'm gonna believe that. You're done. I'm
gonna go ahead and believe that.
I'm gonna go ahead and get out of your way. You know what I mean? So while Avery is incarcerated, Lori filed for divorce, which angered him. Avery wrote cards to his children that literally said, quote, "Happy Easter, Daddy loves you. When I get out, I'm going to kill Mommy," unquote.
That's twisted as hell.
Fuck,
Mm-hmm. And there
want her to
are
report this to the police and him get more time.
And there are thousands and thousands of people who believe he didn't kill. Well, we'll get to that, but there are thousands and thousands of people who believe he's innocent. It's crazy.
Nuts.
So his children did not want to go to prison to visit him, but they were forced to. It's reported that Avery would poke and pinch them as forms of discipline and would often hurt them.
That's fucked. They usually try to make it no contact with visits like that.
It depends on the level of security at the prison.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
So obviously his kids would later cut off ties with him.
Yeah, obviously.
So when Lori successfully divorced Avery, he wrote to the courts in an attempt to stop it or get Lori in legal trouble by claiming that she was abusing their children.
Now he's just grasping at straws.
Well, this backfired, and Avery ended up losing his rights to visit with his children, partly due
Let's go.
Yeah. And obviously that was partly due to his claims that he would kill her. You know what I mean? That's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, the evidence is pretty strong.
He also sent images of how he planned to sexually mutilate her. Yeah.
What? Deep what the fuckery.
So when asked, Steven Avery said that he didn't remember what exactly he had written, and that he thought the children wouldn't have been able to read the letters themselves, and that only Lori would be reading whatever he had written.
That doesn't make him sound better.
Not really, no. However...
I only meant for my wife to see these vile, abusive things about how I was going to kill her.
Yeah, right? However, Making a Murderer ignores or glosses over all of this and presents Avery to the public as an innocent man who could not possibly kill somebody.
Bitch.
Yeah.
I think it's obvious which side we're supporting here.
I couldn't keep it biased. There's so much evidence in one direction that, and I know I'm going to upset some truthers that are out there that might hear this, but you need to hear this if you're standing on that side of the fence. I'm sorry. So,
Speak your truth.
so one thing that is clear from all this is that he cannot cope with stress and not having control. So I add this next part here because I wasn't 100% sure on where I should put it, but here we go. And bear with me, this could get a little confusing. So Lori divorces Steven Avery, and then she goes on to marry a man named Peter Dassey. Peter Dassey was previously married to Avery's sister Barbara, and is the father of Brandon Dassey, who I mentioned earlier will give a false confession about his own crimes and so forth. That's a little weird. So both Lori...
Yeah, it's like keeping it in the family. Why would you want to be associated with this family?
I don't know. My guess is it has to be a real small community or something.
It must be, yeah.
So both Lori and Peter were concerned for their safety when Steven Avery is eventually released after his exoneration. So keep this in mind. They know how dangerous he is.
Mm-hmm.
Lori would tell investigators during the Teresa Halbach case that she believed that if Avery had not been wrongfully convicted, years before in the Penny Bernstein case, that she thinks Steven Avery would have killed her, Lori, his wife, which is probably true.
Yeah, I can definitely see that.
So in 1994, Avery's parents hired new lawyers, and they went through every piece of evidence for the Penny Bernstein case. They found the rape kit with the fingernail scrapings from Penny, and they had all that tested for DNA, which wasn't a thing back in 1985 when the assault took place.
Mm-hmm.
It was
I'm glad that they kept these rape kits.
Yeah, that's all. They should. Yeah, always. But then I guess I would argue, eventually, where are you going to put all this stuff? How do you decide what to keep and what not to keep?
Right.
But
it's just good that they kept this, maybe not even knowing that this technology was going to exist in the future. It's just
that's true.
Good.
Yeah, 100%. Especially because they thought they had the right guy.
Right.
Yeah, that's right. Good. Yeah, you know what? Of all the shit we're going to say about the police in this, good for them. Yeah.
I will give kudos where kudos is due.
You don't like to in this.
No, listen. I hate to be a hater for no reason. I will hate when hate is due, and I will give kudos when kudos are due.
Okay. So it was this DNA test that showed it was someone other than Steven Avery's DNA profile. However, the court and the appeal court rejected this evidence.
That's insane.
So basically, the laws are written in such a way to protect convictions from being overturned. So it's harder to overturn a conviction, regardless of what you're holding.
Gotcha.
Avery was repeatedly told to admit guilt and that he could get paroled, but he refused. It was not until 2001, after he had been incarcerated for 16 years, that the Innocence Project agreed to look at Avery's case. Now, the Innocence Project is a nonprofit that looks into people they believe were wrongfully convicted and dig deeper into their cases. It's a great organization. So the DNA was tested again, and they got a full DNA profile from a pubic hair, which excluded Avery. They were also able to conclusively match the profile to a convicted rapist named Gregory Allen, the exact same fucking person they were told about at the beginning.
God, that's infuriating.
Yep.
They didn't even try, and they had the right guy.
Yep. They just didn't even bother. They thought they had their guy. So Avery was released from prison on September 11th, 2003. The day after he was released, officers from the sheriff's office began writing reports and memos about the events that had taken place before his arrest. 18 years prior.
Huh.
They were scrambling to cover their asses, and they were told to make no comments regarding Steven Avery.
Yeah, I mean, they better watch themselves because they're going to get fucking sued to all hell.
Well, all of this is what really builds a lot of the drama from Making a Murderer, because as they're revealing this stuff, it's clear that some wrongdoing took place, and that's where you basically can pry open everything else to fit your conspiracy theory.
Right. Because there's definitely some fuckery happening.
Oh, there's definitely some big fuckery happening. So the then retired district attorney was informed that Avery was proven innocent. And Dennis Vogel, who was the district attorney, was reported to have immediately asked about Gregory Allen's involvement. So instantly he knew. So this caused Avery's lawyers to dig deeper and question whether or not prosecutors knew that Avery was innocent the entire time. So in 2005, the Attorney General began investigating the handling of the Avery case. Gregory Allen had a history of sexual assault, and even though Vogel had previously prosecuted Allen, they ignored him as a suspect in Penny Bernstein's case.
Yeah, that's wild.
Local news had a field day reporting about the poor handling of Avery and Allen.
Yeah, I bet.
You know what? I wish I could have seen it at the time. It became clear to the investigators at the AG's office that law enforcement had blinders on in terms of Avery, and that there was a serious lack of paperwork in the crime.
You don't say.
However, after the Attorney General dug into it, their office issued a statement that found no wrongdoing in handling of the case.
Holy
What the
crap.
fuck?
What?
I'm not kidding.
That's insane.
Always cover your ass, right?
That's all they do.
So with no other avenues left, Avery and his lawyers began to sue the Manitowoc County for $36 million. That amount was settled on to not only allow Avery to start a new life, but also to essentially punish law enforcement and act as a warning to other law enforcement agencies to actually investigate crimes. Making a Murderer presents this as Avery not being interested in the money, only justice.
Huh.
Exactly.
I don't know about that.
Well, don't worry. We have a lot more to go.
Oh, good.
We're probably like 3/4 of the way through part 1. I don't even know. So it should also be noted that Making a Murderer and many other media outlets kept reporting that Avery was in prison for 18 years for a crime he didn't commit. So basically at this point, they're putting it out there and everybody's hearing it that this guy's wrongfully convicted. Like, you got to keep this in mind because it's going to be a big echo, obviously.
Yeah.
So, and obviously, yes, he was wrongfully convicted of raping Penny Bernstein, but he had also been convicted of running Sandra off the road and aiming a gun at her. And part of that...
Right, he's not exactly a guy who's done nothing wrong in his life.
Exactly. Now, Penny Bernstein felt so guilty over what happened to Steven Avery that she wanted to do something to help fix the system.
Oh, God.
She and her attorneys launched an investigation into what law enforcement did and did not do leading up to his conviction. And after an investigation, it was decided that the mistakes that were made by law enforcement were not crimes committed on their part. So no criminal violations, no ethical violations, which meant no changes. So she did her part. I'll give her that. I can't imagine what it would feel like to feel that guilt. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
But she was also manipulated by police as well.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I want to note that during the first episode of Making a Murderer, it ends soon after his release, discussing the lawsuit and hinting that the sheriff's department might frame him for murder. Before the audience has any other details, they jump ahead to Teresa Halbach's disappearance. This includes a soundbite of an officer asking, "Do we have a body?" and "Do we have Avery in custody?" There is zero context as to why the officer is asking these things, and this is clearly meant to be the teaser to get you to click on the next episode. Now, Convicting a Murderer breaks this scene down a little further. The recording comes from the time after Teresa Halbach's car had been found, and police in a different part of the area had arrested someone else on an unrelated charge. So when the officer asks about Steven Avery being in custody, he's assuming the arrest had to do with finding Teresa's car.
Oh.
And Making a Murderer cut off the recording at the moment where the officer asks about that and before the answer comes in. So basically right after, that other officer tells them, "Oh no, that's something else." But Making a Murderer cuts that part out and doesn't include it. So it's very obvious there's a moment of manipulation here. But of course, there wouldn't be much suspense if we heard the whole recording now, would there?
No.
Right, of course.
So jumping back into the life of Steven Avery after his release. Avery had become a sort of celebrity poster child for the justice system, and politicians would have their photos taken with him. State committees were created to reform the procedures in these types of cases. Avery was also testifying and meeting lawmakers that were supportive of him. On Making a Murderer, Avery even states that he was doing his best to be happy. So at this point in his life, Steven Avery has a moment to actually do good in the world. I can say that with all confidence. He's a shithead for everything he's done prior, but he has a moment here where he could have turned it around.
Right.
The problem now is that Making a Murderer barely even touches on this next part. So it's around this time that he meets his second wife, Jody. And his family reports that Avery was extremely abusive towards Jody.
Can you believe this asshole can get married twice?
You're at the end of this whole thing.
Never
You're gonna
blows
be
my
even
mind every time.
more. Yeah, you're gonna be even more angry at the end.
Ugh.
Yeah.
God.
So his brother Earl said that he saw Avery get angry with Jody and that he dragged her by her hair.
Okay, no.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Avery would limit who Jody could see and talk to, even her parents, and he even stated that if she left him, he would burn her parents' house down.
Jesus.
When one of her friends called their home, Avery answered and told this friend that if she ever called again, he would find her and kill her.
Okay, so what did this woman see in him?
You got to keep in mind at this point now, he's been released for this wrongful conviction. He's kind of like a local celebrity. Because the news,
I guess.
Yeah, the news is reporting this guy. He was innocent of this crime. He spent all this time in jail, and he has supposedly he's got $36 million coming his way soon. So that's maybe what she saw in him. Not to say anything about Jody. Like, I don't know what her motivations were, but
Right.
even Avery's older brother Chuck accused Steven Avery of abusing Jody, discussing a time when Avery gave her a black eye and choked her into unconsciousness.
Fuck.
Jody stated that when she came to, Avery was dragging her outside.
Whoa.
Now, she doesn't go into further details as to what happens after she became conscious, unfortunately, because I would like to know what the fuck he actually had to say about it. But yeah, there are phone calls between Avery and Jody after his arrest for Teresa that clearly show him trying to gaslight her and manipulate her into what she should and should not be saying to authorities. He literally said at one point during one of these recordings, "I don't think you care about me." And she responds, "I do." And he then says, "Then why don't you deny everything?"
Wow.
His pattern on how he treats women is so clear and obvious that
Yeah, that is just sick.
the fact that there are anybody who thinks he's possibly innocent of hurting somebody, that fucking blows my mind. Now, Making a Murderer shows Jody as a loving and supportive wife, but she would later come out and told the truth. She stated with confidence and certainty that she believed Steven Avery killed Teresa Hallback, and he has threatened to kill her, Lori, and others.
Right. That he's threatened to kill many people at this point, it seems like.
At this point, yeah. So, of course, supporters of Avery do that tried and true bullshit of asking why Jody didn't just leave him, ignoring the fact... Exactly. Ignoring the fact that when you're being controlled, manipulated, and cut off from your support network, fear will keep you in line. There's literally videos of these assholes attacking Jody, and they are appalling.
That's so awful.
So meanwhile, Avery's lawyers find out that back in 1995, someone called the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Office and informed them that they had Gregory Allen and they thought Steven Avery was innocent. There's a police officer named Deputy Colburn who took the call, but he doesn't really do anything with it. They learn that Colburn didn't even write a report on the incident until the day after Avery was released from prison. Colburn then contacts his superior, a guy named Detective Lenk, and they then contact the sheriff's office. Deposition of officers from the sheriff's office demonstrates a clear plan on their part to keep Avery in prison and not look into other suspects.
Mm-hmm.
So Making a Murderer goes out of their way to make the viewers believe that the $36 million lawsuit will not be covered by the insurance companies in this suit. They present it that the officers or the city or the county would have to pay that money to him themselves, like out of their own pockets.
I'm pretty sure that's never how it works, but okay.
Exactly. It's never how it works.
No, it's not. When the police get sued, no, that's not how it works.
Convicting a Murderer spends some of their time debunking this, as the state or county would have had the insurance to pay this out, and that typically these types of lawsuits are settled for far less.
Yeah, there's no way he was actually gonna get $36 million.
Exactly. So there's something else we do need to discuss, and this is another one of those ones that I was uncertain where exactly to put this, because it really does seem like it comes out of nowhere, but it does need to be discussed. It can't be skipped over the way Making a Murderer skipped it over entirely. After Avery's release from prison, as previously stated, his children cut him off. However, immediately after his release, it was only his sons that had stopped talking to him. His daughter Jenny was there for a time. This is not addressed on Making a Murderer. It was reported that Jenny, after spending time with Steven Avery, would come home with hickeys on her neck.
Oh.
Ew.
When Lori, his first wife, asked where they had come from, Jenny told her that Avery gave them to her because he thought it was funny.
Ew.
Yeah. There's nothing fucking
this man
funny.
is so despicable and nasty.
Now, Avery's brother Earl, you know, the one he made sleep with his ex-wife Lori, Earl had 3 daughters. There was Brittany and Kayla, who were biologically his, and Marie, who was his wife Candy's from a previous relationship that Earl had adopted. Kayla reported that Steven Avery had inappropriately touched her and tried to kiss her.
Oh.
Candy, Earl's wife, threatened to report Avery to police if he ever did something like that again.
I should have fucking reported him the first time.
Yep. Because as we know, as many cases that we cover, repeat offenders are going to repeat offend.
Exactly.
Avery claimed that Marie, the oldest, the one from before Candy, had wanted to join him for whatever activities he was doing, wanted to go wherever he was going. Now, I do want to say this. As someone who has close friends with children that I enjoyed spending time with, or even my own nieces and nephews and friends' kids, whatever, doing something with like an uncle or a close family friend isn't inherently inappropriate.
But it is when it's this fucking guy.
Right, exactly. And it obviously depends on what you're doing and the age of the child. You don't take a 10-year-old to a fucking horror movie like Saw, right? You just don't do it. When Avery would take Marie like fishing or what have you, no one questioned it.
Well, they probably should have.
They definitely should have.
Considering who this fucking guy is.
So Candy and Earl's youngest daughter, Brittany, at one point had photos that showed Avery pouring alcoholic drinks down Marie's throat.
What?
And
what the fuck?
And Marie with only a bra on, and Avery having had written things on her body.
What the fucking fuck?
Yeah, this is after his release from this wrongful conviction. Keep this in mind. Yeah. Candy stated that she saw.
Well, it sounds like he's trying to get a rightful conviction.
He's on the path. Don't you worry. Candy stated that she saw one photo where Avery had Marie's arms pinned above her head, but Marie claimed that it was just them horsing around.
Yeah, okay.
I'm sure that's what he called it.
Avery would eventually get his hands on these photos and destroy them.
Ugh.
Earl stated that when Avery was released, Steven Avery believed that he was bulletproof and could get away with any crime.
Of course.
Avery is even on camera talking to a reporter saying, quote, "I can do what I want now. No one can tell me what to do," unquote. So with the lawsuit for millions happening, Avery would tell everyone that when he got his money, he would buy them a house, a car, etc. At one point, his brother's daughters, Marie, Kayla, and Brittany, were swimming at a resort or condo place near where they lived called Fox Hills. Avery arrived unexpectedly and instructed the girls not to tell anyone that he was there.
Never a good thing.
Avery promised the younger family members that if they kept his secret, he would buy them expensive gifts for their silence. After Avery began dating essentially his second wife, Jody, Marie would often call Avery's home all the time, and Jody questioned Avery about this. According to her, Avery straight out told her that he had fucked Marie.
What?
Could you imagine admitting that to your wife?
Absolutely not. No way.
So
Yeah.
fucking gross.
I fucked my underage niece.
Ugh.
When Jody told him he was sick, Avery began beating her, and from that point forward, their relationship was abusive. This allegation was released to the public and reported on the news, but there is not a single fucking word about it on Making a Murderer.
Yeah, what is wrong with these people?
No idea, man. You watched it, right?
Yeah, no, I know. I just like...
Yeah, they left out a lot of information.
Nuts.
Avery told Jody that whatever had happened between him and Marie was over, but that the girl kept calling. Earl, his brother, said that he believes Marie got caught up with Avery because she was young, and that to her, Avery was famous, and she had enjoyed a part of that.
And she was groomed, so.
Exactly. And of course, Avery's promising her lots of gifts.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you think someone's going to be a millionaire, you kind of think a little bit different when they make promises. Avery told Marie that what was happening between them was okay because the two of them were not actually blood relatives because his brother had adopted her.
Holy crap, that is...
Gross.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So when Earl and Candy learned what was going on, Marie became distant from them and resisted everything they told her.
Oh.
So in 2006, Marie would finally admit to Avery's wrongdoing after investigators were digging into Teresa Hallback's case. Marie stated that Avery forced her to have sex with him against her will. According to Marie, Avery coerced her to enter a bedroom where he pushed her on the bed and held her down.
Oh.
She told him to stop, saying, "You were just in jail for having not done this. Why would you do something so dumb now?"
Oh.
Because he thinks he's bigger and better than everyone.
He thinks he's untouchable.
So messed up.
Avery's response was that he laughed at her, and she responded, "It's not funny." She resisted and tried to leave, but he physically restrained her. Listening to the recording of her reliving this is fucking heart-wrenching. Marie also reported that Avery told her that if she didn't do the things he wanted to do, he would set their home on fire.
Oh my
Another pattern here.
What a monster.
There is also audio recordings of Avery on the phone with his brother Earl, Marie's adoptive father, discussing what Marie told police. Earl said that he was aware of what Marie was saying about Steven, and that once he became aware, he put a stop to the interrogation, to which Steven Avery got angry with him and told him that he should have stopped it sooner, and that he was now probably going to be charged with that crime. Avery,
why the hell did he stop it?
I don't know. I really don't. But Steven Avery continues to play the victim, and he has stated that he believed Candy turned Marie against him. Like her mother turned her against him.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So, of course, truthers believe that Marie made this entire thing up and that it was all consensual.
How old was she?
She's in her late teens at this point, so she may, or depending upon when it happened, because there's no exact dates, she might have been 17, but even still.
Okay, so first of all, statutory.
Agreed.
So not consensual. She's a child. She can't consent.
Agreed. But, I mean, it's different in each state. Keep that in mind, because if you remember the Daisy Coleman case where she was sexually assaulted by a group of boys and then left on her front lawn for dead, the age of consent, I think, was 15, and she was right on that cusp. So
yeah, there's a thing that there's a legal age of consent, and then there's a moral age of consent.
Agreed. No, I agree. We've had this discussion. I 100%
Yeah.
agree with you. But authorities did not convict Avery for Marie due to him facing the charges of Marisa Hallbach. And it's believed that if Avery were to ever try to be released after this, they would charge him for Marie's rape. But realistically, the statute of limitations has already run out on that. So them keeping that in their back pocket is probably not the reason they didn't charge him. They probably figured they had him for murder, so why do anything else?
Right, exactly.
I would just pile it on.
I agree with you, 100%. So we're going to end it here for part 1. I know we're not even to the meat and potatoes of this, but
what?
Yeah, that's the end of part 1.
We're not to the meat and potatoes?
No,
What's in the meat?
we haven't even gotten to Teresa Hallback's murder
I
yet.
guess you're right. We haven't even gotten to the main thing that we're talking about.
Right. This is just his early life, the first crime where he was wrongfully convicted, and everything he did since being released. We haven't even gotten to the main part of this, which is the murder of Teresa Hallback, and she's overlooked oftentimes in these cases. And it's unfortunate that I've only touched on her a little bit in part 1, but we're going to spend a lot of time with her on part 2. Because,
well, dang, it's going to be a hard waiting a week for these answers.
Yes, I know. And we apologize to everybody, but there's no way you can do all this in an hour to an hour and a half. This had to be done. We had to give it its due care. So So yeah, so we're going to end it here for tonight. We'll see you guys back here next week. Once again, I am Janus Dead.
I'm Jameson Dead.
And I'm Joyous Dead.
And we'll see you in a week.
Bye.